Welcome back, everybody, to another Aloha Friday Live. I'm excited because I'm sitting here with DJ. We're about to get into a heavy topic. We're not going to try to make it heavy, though. We're going to try to make it some light. Leadership and mental health. Folks, we're all affected by it, so don't act like you ain't, because we know better. Thank you for being with us tonight. I'm hopeful that you're going to enjoy tonight's topic. DJ, thank you for being with us and sharing not only what you know about mental health, but we're going to be talking about other stuff, folks. We're going to be talking about our experience in the military and everything that we have gone through throughout the year. So thank you for being with me, DJ.
Thank you. I know we have so many commonalities. I can't wait to kind of hop along the show and talk about all these different things and really how we're all so much more similar than different, especially when it comes to mental health.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. And when we were talking prior to going live, and hey, folks, this song makes me want to say "wepa," but that's that's just
Yeah.
the Puerto Rican in me. But tonight's topic, and we were just talking before the actual live going on. I know I have dealt with some things in my life, both personally, professionally, just being in an environment. I grew up in the Bronx. That's a mental challenge in itself. If you can survive the Bronx, wow, you're pretty tough. But not always, right? Sometimes you don't you survive the Bronx and you go somewhere else that's quiet and you go, you lose it, right? So, but a lot of experiences. And I'll share some of those for you that are listening. And if you're with us, hey, check who's here.
Hey, G, what's up, girl?
Thank
I
you,
can't
G,
wait.
for having. Hey, she's either in the neighborhood or coming to the neighborhood. One of the two.
Yes.
I don't
We're
know
going to
if
meet
she's
in
here
real
yet.
life, all of us.
All right. Well, we're gonna have to do a live someday, right? Because we're all in the same vicinity. But so we're talking leadership and mental health. I'm gonna share some things that affected me in my life, some scenarios, because I know that some of you out there um, hide it pretty well. Let me just say that you hide it pretty well. I know I hid it pretty well for a very long time because of the profession, right? The profession
Yes.
begged that of me to kind of put it onto the side. But hey, before we get into all of that, DJ, give us a little bit background from you because I
Sure.
know that we're both service members.
Yes.
I don't know how
Yeah.
much of the world knows that, but
Oh,
I'll let you go.
thank you. Thank you. So, yes, I was in the US Air Force when I was young and before I had the silver. That's really what helped me go to college and get my education and pursue psychology. So, I graduated with a bachelor's in psychology. After that, I went ahead and moved forward with working in social services, working with individuals with disabilities, mental health issues, people going through just traumas in general. I always knew that I wanted to work with individuals, humans, hearts, really assisting individuals overcome their hardships, their disabilities, their mental health issues. And it's just something I've always been passionate about. So I can approach this from a military perspective. I can approach it from a person with mental health issues, right? Dealing with mental health issues as an advocate for mental health issues, being a caregiver to someone that has mental health issues. And that's so I know that this is something that affects, and you even mentioned in the workplace as a leader, having employees, having colleagues, it just affects all facets of our lives.
Yeah, and definitely, folks that are in leadership, if you are out there and you're listening, and you are in a leadership position, you're either dealing with a situation or circumstance that requires you to have the mental fortitude to be able to navigate through some of these things that come up. And folks, and there's a myriad of things that could happen at a workplace, but moral, ethical, and legal, those three things alone, those areas alone can challenge you and your mental ability to be able to navigate those waters without losing yourself. And sometimes they require you to, let's say, exchange some of you for their best interest, and that's usually where things do not go so well. So, and I was talking before this whole thing, and I'll give you all my story real quickly because this is DJ show, right? So, uh, but real quickly, and then we're going to explore this because I've talked about this before. There was a period in my life where I was in a management position, post service. So let me just say that post service, it's hard enough trying to figure out where we stand in the scheme of the whole world as a service member coming out. And here I am. I'm headed to work. There was a circumstance at work that was kind of weighing me down, and I reach for. I'm at the work site. I reach for the knob to open the door to get into the building, and I froze. Now, if anybody knows me, and anybody that knows me for the last 26 years, um, I'm pretty, I'm pretty top rung, right? I've always strived to be the top rung, and ended up in the top rung in the military. But here I am, a fish out of my water, and I'm having a hard time even opening the door to go inside my work site. I was paralyzed, DJ.
Yeah.
I froze. My hand was extended, and I was looking at the doorknob
You can
because
feel your
the
body.
stress, yeah, the stress was so intense that it came out in my body. It's like,
Yeah. Physically. Physically. Something you wouldn't imagine, something mental or something psychological, physically coming out of you, stopping you literally in your tracks. That looming fear of what is ahead and what you have to deal with and manage.
I'm telling you, it was. I'll never forget it because I was like, I was there, but I wasn't there, and then I was looking at myself, and I'm like, "Yo, dude, what's wrong, man? Just grab the doorknob." I'm talking to myself. Girl, you got this, and I'm like, I don't want this. And
Yeah.
so my body and my mind was going in a debate as to what we're gonna do.
Did you make it through the door?
I made it through the door. I made it through the door. I stopped and said, Lord, hey, let me tell you, there's
You
some
had to
power.
seek some peace, some comfort.
I said, Lord, now we gotta do something. I can't stand here. we we gotta do something. And so I
Mm,
did manage to get through the door. And it did manage to be my last day.
okay.
Let's just stay there.
Well, hopefully, you went ahead and you learned something about yourself, right? And you were able to say, wow, okay, this is something very real. And this is something that really is not to be taken lightly, right? And I think when we talk about leadership, and we were talking a little bit about the show, is w- I from what we were discussing, it's implied these are not things that we're taught. We're not taught how to deal with individuals per se in that emotional state, in a psychological state. I think a lot of training for leaders comes from just the perspective of running an organization, running whatever it is, your business, your sales, and really it's driven by all that stuff. And I don't really speak too much to that because that's not the language that I'm familiar with. But I feel, and from what I've heard from, and gee, I know you're HR, so I feel that I've been approached by lots of individuals in HR that really have don't know how to manage and are overwhelmed with the crisis that is going on in mental health, and how individuals aren't prepared, organizations aren't as prepared because they've been so focused on other things. And now with the pandemic and everything that's occurred, it's magnified all these issues. And we all know, and this is something I say frequently, that we can look at the news and the statistics and see what's being reported on how everything is increasing, whether it comes to substance abuse or domestic violence or Suicide uh, is on the rise. Just all these different social issues that that we think aren't part of our organization, and that has nothing to do with our employees. And that is the furthest from the truth, right? These are employees that are they go home or they're working from home currently, and they're dealing with these things in the background, in their minds, in their hearts. They're having to deal with illness or disability or mental illness. And it can be so consuming. It can be extremely consuming. And when we're not taught how to manage or how we can get help, or if there's anybody that understands what we're going through, it compounds that feeling of not wanting to share, not wanting to say anything. We feel that much more alone. So really, I think there has to be a new approach into how we work, and we really encourage individuals to share what they're feeling and what they're going through, so we can implement ways to assist them to get them through that. And there's so many resources out there, in the sense that I think there's agencies that are preparing for this to help organizations provide support services to their employees, as they're dealing with their jobs and really trying to maintain their employment, maintain their position, maintain their roles and their duties, and do their best. But while things, quote unquote, are falling apart behind the scenes. So there's a lot of work to be done. And I think we're all kind of starting to realize it. Jihan, I want to see that comment. I was talking everything you're saying about HR and how in some cases addressing can be challenging is spot on. Right. I don't know how much training has been provided to individuals as they pursue and go into HR positions. So I don't know. Is there a hole? Is there a need there? Are there ways to work with your community, your local community, and find out what services are out there that provide assistance to your employees that aren't just maybe 3 EAP appointments and that's it?
No,
So
no, it's a great question, and I'm gonna throw her second comment here. Uh,
yes.
but yeah, there's a difference between HR and HR today and HR 2 years ago, right? Because everything's changed, and so you're trying to uh, push today and the
Yes.
people that we have today through an old system that was pre all the effects that we have had and all the trauma that we have had, you know, and
The
and
changes, the challenges,
a lot of people
everything being
know that
flipped.
a lot of folks have lost loved ones. I lost mom in April to COVID. So I mean, there's a lot of things that are not the same. And yeah, and she says, "I wish I had the stats." Yeah, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, it's one thing we cannot do as leaders. And so going back to my thing, my whole thing is that
Yeah.
one thing we can't do as leaders is act like if everything's the same prior to 2020.
Or okay.
Or it's all right. It's all right.
It's
No.
all okay. It's okay. We're
it,
gonna get through this. It's okay.
and I love optimism, right? I love
Yeah.
optimism. I'm gonna be one to tell you,
Sure.
look, it's not all nice right now, but we can figure a way forward. We can. We can. All right. But that it's gonna be okay, you don't know. You don't know. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
when I was going through that whole thing, I was in senior leadership. And here I
Mm.
am, a guy that's been through, I had 2 stars or a star on my war ribbon. Why? Because
Mhm.
I have been through 2, you know, Iraq the first time, and then, Afghanistan and all of that after. So I served through both of those periods. And
Heavy
so a
tours.
person that has been deployed into wartime, right? That is, well, number one, folks, deployment alone deployment alone doesn't guarantee you're coming home, right? That's just you
Just
being
think of that in itself,
right.
right? You
Yeah,
haven't even left.
you
You
haven't,
haven't even left.
you ain't
And
even
you
done
already
anything,
know. And you already know.
right? So, but being in country, in situ, in the mix, adds a different flavor. And so, what was funny is because I asked myself to that. I say, hey, Enrique, man, and I talk to myself a lot. I say, hey, Enrique, man, you've been through 2 wars, man. Why are you buckling to this? This isn't, but it's something that I was never exposed to in the military. Yeah, I'm telling you, there were people that would check up on you, but in the military, we despise micromanagement. We we don't want it. We want people to become leaders. So you can't make people become leaders if you're always on them, right? So it was a different scenario, a different thing that I had no experience with, nor did I facilitate. I love helping people grow.
Right.
So as leaders, you have to look through a different lens. Kind of G was talking about different lens when you're going to be dealing with things of the mental nature now. Because if somebody, let's say, hires me, just say they hire me. I'm not doing that, but somebody hires me,
Right.
and they say, let's just say, they say, hey, this COVID thing, that's a hogwash. They're making it up. I saw my mom. I physically, with my eyes, saw my mom gasping for air. So if you say that, and just because maybe you haven't experienced it, there's only a handful of things that are going to happen, right?
Yeah. But that's right there. You make a good point because that's your experience. And to disvalidate or unvalidate that, right? Instead of really saying, wow, okay, he's really sharing something with this is something that's true to him, to his experience. So we really need to honor that. We need to really respect that. And we need to understand that that is Enrique and what Enrique's going through. Yes. So sorry for your loss, Enrique. So, it's these experiences are not to be just dismissed. And I think that that has been such a part of the history of mental health is we don't talk about that. We don't address that. This is not the place nor the time. We have work to do. And that's just not reality anymore. That mentality of just ignoring that and not considering that part of it, and I want to go back to you're in your military because this is as a military, you're not disappearing on me. I have a question for you. So as a
Oh, yeah.
military, were you given any information as to mental health? Were you provided any resources as you were being transitioned out of the right taps
Right,
transitioned out
right.
of the military? Were they now, and this is just an assumption, so I'm going to be quite honest that this is just an assumption. I assume that in the military they don't want you to share those mental health issues because you'll lose what you've worked so hard for. They'll get you out of there real quick on a medical discharge or something, right? They'll find a way to say, oh wait, he's not, what's the word, starts with an F, he's not what's the word, somebody help me.
And then
He's
after,
like you're not, it'll come to me in a minute, but like you're not ready, or maybe you can't handle this, or maybe you're not qualified for this position. And so, right, we can't open up about
fit
those
for
things.
duty.
Fit for duty. Thank you. Yes, that's exactly what I
Yeah.
was looking for. So maybe you're not fit for duty if you're sharing this type of information. So again, it's counter against what we're trying to do, but because of the shame associated with mental health issues, I think it's created more of a problem, right? As you can see. So I'm just curious as to your experience with mental health, what they provided or what, they resources they gave as you were transitioning, and
Yeah,
how
well,
that.
yeah. In service, there's a lot that's provided, right?
Okay,
And
good.
but I will tell you that I grew up in the military through an era where it was a no-no if you had a secret clearance or above. Yeah, you going through? Hey, let's talk about it, but don't talk about it,
We
right?
don't talk about that. Right.
Right, because um, it was just that way. But there was a period
Good.
through my service where that started to change. Now you know well there the military is the test bed of almost everything that America wants to do.
The
They want
government.
eh,
Let's just say it's the government.
why? Because they be like, yo, 0600 hours, everybody show up. We're having a muster. Everybody getting a shot. What shot? Don't worry about it. You need it for deployment.
Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth?
You need it for deployment. Aye, aye. All right, we'll be there. Right. So
Terrifying. I know. Terrifying.
people talking about, hey, I don't want to get this shot. And I'm like, you know how many shots I got? For stuff that I and I didn't even make the deployment, right? Anthrax. I got all kinds of stuff in me. You don't want to know. But
you glow in the dark. Turn the lights off. You be glowing.
So, but there was a time where the mental health of service members did become a priority.
Good.
And it started de-escalating to the point where you could say, hey man, look, I'm tapped out.
It's affecting me. It's affecting my family.
Right.
It's affecting my relationships.
I need
it's
some
affecting
help.
my ability to get through the day.
Yep, I need some help. And
okay.
And then the military started to educate their senior enlisted.
Good.
So that they would not be the source of that mental angst, right?
Right, because they're not therapists, right? They're not trained mental health professionals. So there was a point where there was awareness to it and there was a movement to really assist these soldiers, airmen, military members. Okay, great.
And not only to assist them, but to not be the source of the anguish, right? To not be be a leader. You're not supposed to be the source of the pain here.
Yes.
You got to be the solution,
no, of course.
right? So you got to be at least part of the solution to help these sailors. And so senior enlisted started to get educated in those areas so that we could provide a viable way for all sailors to, and in my case, sailors, to be able to seek the help they needed and still feel like they were productive and participatory in the work. Because, once you feel like you ain't got nothing to give, you just like,
you don't care. Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
So those two things happen, but
so that feeling, yeah.
You mentioned specifically transition.
I was just going to ask you now about corporate America.
If you did not,
how that was.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, if you did not say anything, they were happy. They signed that paper. You signed the paper, and you got your tap, and you was out. But how much time do you have? Are they gonna keep you if you say, "Oh, I got this"?
Right. No, because then you become you can get in harm's right. Things can, turn into liability. A lot of issues there, right? And you don't want to send individuals, airmen, soldiers, sailors to active duty, time of war in that. So I'm glad that really there's been that progress in that. So let's switch to corporate and live like what it's like in the civilian world, as we call it, right? And then I know that this might be a little bit more resonate a little bit better with our viewers and the audience in that sense. Just corporate America or normal 9 to 5 or just going to work and fulfilling the duties of an employee, a W-2, the responsibilities. And like you said, there's so many different types of jobs. So really not talking about anything particular, but just having to deal with the stressors of a job and going, and then with everything that's changed. So now that just leads, like, how can we fill in these holes that are needing attention that these issues that are starting to rise that become more prevalent, these are becoming crises that people that were not that like you said, we're not living in the same times as before. So wasn't what once wasn't now is.
Right. Yeah. And no, and that's why I always stress, especially when I talk about leadership development now, because even my
Right.
instructions and my trainings and all of that had to address the fact that we're no longer there, right? Things that used to not be an issue are. And so my request to leaders, especially when I'm talking to them in groups, educating them on effective ways to lead today,
Mhm.
is that they must get out of their head that it is yesterday. You can't do it.
Great. Yeah.
And leaders that fail, and I tell them straight up, right? So leaders that fail to do that will hurt the workforce. They
Oh,
will
yeah.
hurt the workforce. Why? Because most people are not willing to get let go of those leaders. What they'll do is they'll let go of the workforce that needs the help. But if a leader is not being part of the equation and educating themselves and preparing themselves for the workforce of today, they are failing them. And so that's what I say.
That's powerful. I love that. That is powerful. I think that so okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about disability navigator and that role that I fulfilled when I was working for the workforce. I was working here for this local state workforce board, working with individuals receiving benefits, looking for employment out of the workforce for a long time. I had to have those conversations about disability, mental health issues, right? Disclosing. So let's number 1 is the disclosure. That is such something that I talk about frequently. It comes up a lot in these talks because and we talked about this a little bit beforehand is that people don't say what's really going on, right? But there's a fear, retaliation, losing their job, not being taken seriously, not knowing what they need themselves in that disability or in that mental health issue, in that whatever it is that's really affecting them, right? And sometimes I talk about this a lot is that people don't even know what's going on within themselves. They may not have the insight. They might even not have accepted what is really going on. So if if you're dealing as a leader, as a supervisor, as a manager with somebody that doesn't even for themselves know what's going on, who's going to take the reins? How's this situation going to play out?
Mhm.
Right? So that's number 1. Maybe you're fortunate enough to have someone that really is insightful, someone that really understands, can really verbalize or communicate what they need, how they need it, and they can, that those are the wonderful ones that we look for, I think, right? Like, okay, I can work with that honesty. And I think that this is something that we can accommodate, right? And that's the other portion is the disclosing and then the accommodating. And that has a lot to do with the employer, the office that's doing the hiring, right? And how they're going to accommodate this once that disclosure has been stated. Now we're going into legal, and I wrote that down, moral, ethical, and legal. So having these questions, answering these, considering these questions along throughout the process, this is something that goes back to even when you put up uh, uh, now hiring or
An
the
announcement.
word escape. Yeah, that you're hiring and that whole process, how someone's going to get that information, equal opportunity, they apply. And this is where everything just kind of goes to crap normally, right? Because there's just so much fear, there's so many unknowns, the loomingness of the legalities behind it. And we I'm not going to talk about our government as in the state and like it is now, But the government now is very different than the government that was before, prior to. So, and I know that that is a lot. There's a lot of talks within the HR, management, supervisors, business owners. However, all those that are considering, okay, now we have to deal with all this, right? Accessibility. Um, how are we accommodating unions and their voices and what they're requesting? So there's just a lot going on, and there has to be a lot of open conversations because we all have questions. We're all confused, and we're all more confused that we really like to admit, right?
Yeah, and that's why I said earlier, you can't treat today like let's say, for
Leaders
instance,
got to get together.
yeah, for instance, let's just say a person like me that basically March 2020 was the last time I was at a work site. That was it. That's a long time.
I remember that month clearly.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
many of us do.
the, the world remembers that month. Well, I remember because my job got, and
Right.
so what the people and the situation I left back then in March is not. So if I was to go back in, I got a lot of studying to do. A lot of studying. And if folks said, if you haven't been, in
Yeah.
let's
It's a
say
lot of changes
work,
and a lot
yes,
of capacities, right? From the worker to the management to the business owner to the board. Everyone's been scrambling. No one's really known what to do. And I want to go back to a little bit about the legal, but this conversation should not be happening because of the legalities,
right.
because of looming lawsuits potentially. And that goes a little bit more to do with disability and accessibility in our websites and information, or making sure that our content is accessible to others. So individuals that have hearing impairments or visual impairments and blind have access to that same information. Government entities, government websites. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but when we talk about it from a human to human inside a management leadership, more kind of unit, as opposed to thinking of it more in that other standpoint, it really does go back to morally, are we doing the right thing? Given the time that we're in right now, are we taking care of our fellow humans? Because you're crying, you're struggling as soon as the camera goes off or the computer gets shut, or so to just make it seem like it's not as bad as it is just hurting. It continues to perpetuate the problems.
Yeah, to normalize. That's what to normalize a chaotic environment is the biggest lie.
Yes. Thank you.
It's the
Well
biggest
said.
lie. You can't do that because there are so many intricate details to a person's life.
Or those Band-Aids that we do.
Yeah.
Those quick on the fly Band-Aid it.
So I'll give you an example. A man, because he's successful in every aspect of life, right? But one morning he wakes up and his wife says, I feel like we need to get separated. Do you? So I'm thinking about that would put me. I don't care how many accolades, awards, success I have anywhere that you could put my feet in. My mental anguish will be through the roof.
Yeah.
And for someone to normalize a chaotic 2 years would be like telling me, and we said it before, don't worry, it's going to be all right. It's not all right in here. We may come to a good solution, but today in here, it's terrible.
It's
So
getting to be too much. We can see that. It's
yeah,
getting to
and
be
so
it's that quiet. Let me just what is that? Like holding it in, right? Like you hold it in, you're told to just be quiet. We're told just get through another day and but it mounts up. It doesn't diffuse, it doesn't go away.
so this is my where I implore leaders,
Yeah.
please, these are human beings that you have under your care. It is not your right. It is your privilege to have these human beings under your care. And if you don't care for them individually, I'm not talking about, oh, I care for all my teammates. No, you need to know the individual to apply the appropriate amount of care. And leaders don't do that. They generalize their care. They don't individualize their care.
Right. And I know I can assume that it's scary. How do I do it? How do we individualize everybody? Those are some big conversations that need to be had.
Well, these are the heavy mantle of
Mhm.
leadership. This is the
Yes.
heavy mantle of leadership that most people do not consider when they're looking for that position. And
So
so you
true.
get into that position and you can't help people with their mental health because you don't know what's going on.
You're not prepared. You're
You're
not
not.
prepared. You
You're not.
weren't really honestly provided any sort of insight. I mean, unless you went to school, right, for something of such, right,
Unless
and you
I
had some
taught you.
experience. Yeah. But no, normally, I mean, I would assume just in general,
Yeah.
day-to-day normal life, not someone like me that studied and stayed within the field.
Mhm.
But there is no information enough provided to be able to deal with that and understand that this is going to be part of what is your responsibility when you're working with guiding, really empowering as you should as a leader, right? Tending to, taking care of the unit, your I don't know, we could go to military terms, your squadron, your flight, whatever.
Your group. Your
your
group. Your team,
June, your
right?
team, your unit, but I think we're a lot similar in that way as leaders. I really love taking care of the individual and I really like love getting to know the uniqueness, the differences in all my employees or, you know, the individuals that I'm working with and collaborating with. It just makes you that much more stronger when you're able to provide that support on the back end in those darker moments so they can succeed and then they can regain their strength. They can regain the morale. And then that just continues down that sense. You're boosting the morale of the team when you're encouraging, when you're highlighting the diversity, the differences, the challenges, and then in celebrating the small wins. Those celebrating those small wins, I mean, they can really carry a team. They can really carry you to the next hard moment that's just right around the corner. I mean, it's inevitable. There's going to be another bump. There's going to be another like hard hitting, like, to the gut in some capacity. We could,
Yeah.
and I leave it open, very open in general, but that's just the way it goes because you just never know which angle it's going to come from. Is it going to come from the work? Is it going to come from the family? Is it going to be your kid? Is it going to be your God rest in peace, your mom?
Mhm.
You get that. So you just never know. And to not be prepared or considering that as you're moving into a leadership position, a leadership role, and preparing yourself to take on those types of issues, concerns from your team. Um, yeah,
And
that's
that's we talk about that period in my life. I literally, and let me tell you, you don't, you have to be careful how you move on from one thing to the other. So I left that job, right? I left that job, but I didn't take care of that feeling.
what was in here and in here.
That for those out there that maybe have a similar situation, or you had that experience and you haven't seen anything else. But when April came and that happened to my mom, it was unexpected because basically me my brother shut in my mom. She wasn't going nowhere, right?
Wow.
He had her and he lived with her. I only live about an hour and a half from him. He he was like, everything shut in. Don't want nothing in, don't want nothing out. And she was so adamant, right? So we didn't expect out of nothing.
No. Right.
We did
No.
not expect my mom. Probably one of us, but not her, because my brother cocooned her, right? So he could, he made sure that she had everything and she wasn't going nowhere. He would get it all. She was so adamant of seeing somebody. That somebody came and had COVID. Didn't know. That's how she ended up getting it and passing
Getting
away.
sick.
But I say all that to this. Remember, I left that job. Okay, fine, all right. I didn't have to deal with that. When she passed away, I started feeling the same anxiety, although it was not a direct attack. My body and my mind recognized that feeling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I got so overwhelmed with the grief, I had to quit my job, the one I had at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
No. I
that
think
I
we're
had
just
to,
so conditioned to not pay attention. We're so conditioned to stay busy,
I,
fulfill the duty,
I said, and
do the
I was,
damn things.
and I was honest. I say, hey, folks, look, I I I cannot get paid for something I'm not doing, and right now my head ain't in the right place. So it's best for me to just cut this out, let you go ahead forward while I regroup here because I need some time. And but the thing was that my body and I was able to recognize it. Like, hold up, I felt like this before.
Wow.
It was over here. Oh no, we're gonna cut
Imagine
this,
if you couldn't even identify that, if you couldn't even
and
self-identify that.
and
And
that
so many
is
people can't.
and that is the truth. Not too many people can say, "Oh, hold up, I know what this is. Hold on now." And that's usually where things can spider out to different things.
Mhm.
Different.
Oh, yeah, you start, displacing that, you start projecting that, you start pointing fingers, blaming, it just comes out in so many different ways. But yeah, I mean, you could see it within yourself. You could feel it and you could recognize it. So that is, but as leaders, again, going back, like being able to, how do we approach that when we may see that in somebody that doesn't see that in themselves, and they need help, they know they need assistance, they need something more. It's just so many things out there that we just don't know about, that people are going through, and it affects our lives and given situations. Let me read this. People in certain positions can make us feel like we are in the wrong for having personal lives and difficulties. So it's true.
That is true.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that is so true.
look, but I'll make sure to give credit. The organization I was with, very, very understanding, were operating in the now, right? They were operating. They knew that not only that this happened, but the circumstances around it and how
Yeah.
that had affected the world. So they did a marvelous job in understanding the reasons
Yes.
for me to take aback, and they supported it, right?
So what made that leadership different? What made that organization different?
Well, number one, they deal with how you call it. They deal with corporate, um, how to say,
Diversity,
yeah,
inclusion,
yeah.
and
They deal with that.
equity issues. So
Yeah, they
okay,
deal with
okay,
D&I.
good.
They deal with climate. That's what I was trying to say.
Oh,
Climate. So
sustainability, environmental
right, and
awareness.
so
So they're
They
sensitive, they're
actually
understanding.
executed what they stood for and what they were in the business for, which is great. You
There
hardly
you
ever,
that's quality.
yeah, you hardly ever get that, but they did.
Good, good.
And so I applaud them and give them credit because they did. They did do that for me. Um, but you're right, Mackenzie. Hey, uh, that goes back to the leadership having the appropriate education, having the appropriate position internally position to execute themselves as a resource and benefit versus as a a driver. Get this job done. I
Mhm.
don't care, because then going back to what we say, you cannot operate the same. You're gonna pay the price. You know how we've seen the price being paid?
Mm.
4.7 million people saying I'm out.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's
So that's
exactly
a
how.
little bit about my story. I would agree with that. Like I said, I worked for the local workforce board. It was a little stressful, right? Unemployment benefits, people looking for that disability benefit, they can't find employment. They're unable to work due to medical issues, conditions, autoimmune, just a variety of things, right? Jobs, there's no jobs available. I mean, it was heavy. It is dark times. We're still in dark times. I mean, I don't want to say I see a light at the end of the tunnel. So, because I really don't. So it's still, we're in it. We're still in it.
Yeah.
So it's really important to keep talking about this as companies, as organizations. Are we making sure that we have those resources, support businesses that can provide our teams what they need when they need it? Are you preparing? Are you creating those plans ahead of time? Are you looking at the processes before, right, everything happens and then there's a crisis within your team, within your staff? And yeah, so I encourage, always reaching out and consulting, finding a consultant that can review processes and that may specialize in that can help you to have just some clear guidelines to what to do, and you know what's the route that's going to work best for the organization to protect what we all work so hard to create, right, and maintain that a good healthy working culture and environment, and really not creating more divisiveness and anguish and devastation and
I wonder
chaos.
for those that are listening, and I see a handful of folks on the platforms here. If they have noticed a change in their leadership since March 2020, and have they noticed improvement in the way they execute their leadership in regards to mental health? Because if leadership, and this is where really the buck stops at leadership, ownership number one. If you're an owner of an organization, you're the CEO, you're the owner, and you're running it like it used to be. Shame on you. That's just the way. If your leadership, now let's say the owner is, hey, no, we need to really evaluate this. This is different times. We have to start to uh, make sure that we're timely, that our leadership is timely. Then,
I love that.
some of the leadership.
Respond proactive. Proactive, not reactive. There we go. I think we touched on this and the word popped in my head, but then I didn't say it. But you did even already go talk about this, was leadership being proactive. And I've made references to it too. So yeah, you just can't wait. But really changing with progressing with what is going on and being attentive
Look at Mackenzie.
actively.
My leadership has gotten worse. And
It's
and and Mackenzie, I understand that point, not because I do know it's happening, um, but
yes.
because corporations and organizations refuse to accept that these are different times and they're trying to normalize chaos. That's why, you cannot turn the clock, the hands of time here and
You
act
can't
like
pretend.
yeah, you can't pretend like this is
Like,
not going on.
or it's
But
gonna
they
go back to the
are.
same.
But they are.
If they think that things are gonna go back to the way they used to be, I specific listen, Enrique. I'm gonna say this. I
Linda.
specifically remember March 2020 when I turned to my coworker and I said, "We are never gonna. This is never gonna be the same." People say 6 months we'll be back in the office. I was like, bullshit. Okay, we've been through chemical warfare training, biological warfare
Yep.
training. Like all it takes is for them to poof something into the air and there we go, right? Gas masks. We're trained for that. Now we don't get gas masks. Now it's a little face fabric mask, okay? But still, as military, I remember vividly going through that gas chamber.
Everybody does.
Who doesn't? What military doesn't remember that wonderful gas chamber
Everybody does.
experience? But really, and for me, that was it. It was like, I would remember this. All it takes is just one particle to just be out there. And
Yes, you are.
there, yeah. Ooh. So, and it happened. Essentially, it happened. And I could see it. I had that feeling and I'm like, oh, this sounds like something we've been trained on. But it was really hard for people, civilians, to understand what I meant. And I was like, ah, okay. Yeah, this is gonna be scary. Because I think that for me, had I not had that training in the military, there was no way I would have been really able to have an insight as to what was to come and how I was about to see the world change from what we knew it. And some of my friends laughed. They were like, okay, And I was like, well,
Yeah, the
what are you gonna
sad
say?
the sad part of it all is that in these cases, when we're talking about the well-being of our workforce, mental,
Humanity.
the main thing, mental. I was telling my daughter this morning. I said, if your mind ain't right, that's it. That's it. Right. So my mother-in-law has dementia. We are struggling, you
Yeah.
know, watching her forget everything,
I'm gonna do an episode on that, by the
including us,
way. Dementia.
including us. Um,
Yeah.
and and it's tough
Yeah.
to
Your
see
mind.
a person that was round up, as we say in this, service, ready to go at any instance, doing things to forget what the black tube in front of her is called, or that those people, mama, we call it mama, they're not talking about you. It's the news. No, but they're laughing at me.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
is
no. But right, that mental right there. Okay, so as a caregiver, as being someone around, right, understanding, or you said your mother-in-law, so I don't know if she lives with you or you visit, you have to take care of her. Obviously, she needs care, constant
Yep,
care,
yep,
right? So, yeah, you just never know, right? But the mind has to be there. The mind needs to be taken care of and nurtured and protected. And
protect.
as leaders, we have to help people protect themselves. We have to some I think the key is as leaders that there's a sense of responsibility that we carry that we've been quote unquote trained for. And although we haven't been trained for everything, it still is part of what is included into our being and what is part of what we're trying to fulfill. So, right, we want to have a good positive outcome. We want to reach the mission. We want to get to the goal. We want to succeed. We want to make sure we did it in utmost excellence, right? Striving for more than 100%, 1,000%, all the things that we hear and that we're kind of inundated with on a performance level. We didn't even talk about performance. But those pressures to perform and meet demand, and when our mind is not right. and we're not picking up and we're not seeing those signs in our employees and our staff. Yeah, it's a lot, and we need to be prepared with given everything that's happening and taking it seriously.
Yep. Well, folks, we're coming up on the latter part of this because, hey, guess what?
That went quick.
56 minutes went by.
That went quick.
And but it is a definitely a topic that we could do a part 2 on. So stand by for that. Yeah, part 2.
Yeah,
And
no,
so,
it's important.
yeah, so
Get it, Enrique.
because hey, we could all, you know, we could talk about this all day long. There are many facets to this particular topic that were not covered, right? During
Yeah.
this particular time. But if you are out there, you're listening to this now, or you're looking at the replay and you have some things to say, go ahead, put it, and you don't have to put it in the chat. You know, you don't want to get identified. That's fine. Send me a DM, you know, Mackenzie, he said, I'm ready for part 2. Let's
Ready
go.
for part 2.
All right. Hey, for those of you out there listening and your leadership is still having some difficulty learning how to navigate and appropriate themselves and their leadership to the current time, there are ways to help, right? There are ways to help. You know, we cannot save every leader, but we will try. And so one of those ways, send them my way. We'll get them right. That's one way.
Yes. Yes.
Number 2, try to educate those around you, you know, and become that tribe of safety, that safety tribe that you need. Because if there's anything I have learned, leaders come and leaders go. But you cannot sacrifice yourself because that happens. A lot of people, they just wait people out. But while you're waiting people out, you're getting hurt. You're getting hurt, right? And like I had mentioned earlier, you'll recognize that pain later on if you don't take care of it. So hopefully you're taking some time for yourself. Hopefully you can identify those areas in your life where you need to take a pause. But DeeJae, if anybody that's been listening wants to get a little bit of more information about what you do, what you cover, how you can help organizations, how you can help them, how would they do that?
Great. Yeah, I can be contacted. I'm on LinkedIn. That's my preferred platform. So DeeJae DuRante or Silver Fox Talks, I can be found on the social medias by that handle. Really love to be available for conversations and communicating and contacting, having those one-on-one chats in any way that I can help, and just really advocating and assisting individual organizations and management, and just understand how important this is. But my place, really, my heart is for advocacy and being a voice for those that really need that, and lead with compassion and kindness.
Amen.
We need that now more than ever.
Definitely. Hey folks, the leadership, like I said, is a privilege. It's not a right. And I don't
wrote
care
that
how
down
many
too.
people how many people preach and tell you that, hey, you earned this spot. You may have earned the promotion, but leadership is not a spot. It's a lifestyle. It's a way of being. And so if you cannot handle that, then you might want to stay away from leadership. Hey, I have a couple of announcements for all of you. Number 1, this right here, it's a little packet called cookies. Honolulu Cookie Company. Somebody that was with us tonight is going to get one of those. I won't tell you who it is. I'll tell you next Friday, because today we had a great conversation, great participation. I also want to let you know that, hey, Virtual Business and Bourbon is February 23rd. I'll be speaking about podcasting and using podcasting for your business, how to increase your business through podcasting February 23rd, 5 to 6. And if you happen to be in the Tampa area, Central Florida, anybody close?
Me.
Right. A live event where I'll be speaking. This is Business and Bourbon live event, March 16th, 5 to 8 p.m. in Tampa. I'll put the links to both those events in the comments so that you can get a ticket and join me. At that event, I'll be talking about leadership and tech, which is one of the things that I like. And it's going to be a great conversation. Another thing, guess what? Podfest.
Yes.
DeeJae knows because she's going to be speaking. But Podfest Expo,
Yes.
May 26th through the 29th at the Hilton Orlando. I'll be talking about, guess what? LinkedIn Live.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to be talking about.
Right.
I'll be
It's gonna
there
be great.
live doing the whole session. I'm going to take you through the whole works of what I do and get yourself on LinkedIn Live and get you, get your information out there. And then
It's gonna be
if
great.
you want a ticket, use DTLW Podcast 20 at checkout and you'll get 20% off. So, hey, don't ever say I never did anything for you. But get your tickets. I'll put all that information in the comments after the show
Yes.
and get you ready for Podfest. Get you ready for all the business and bourbon. And I would love to see you there. Folks, DeeJae, it's been great to have you. We're going to do part 2, folks. So stand by.